Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting on February 12th at 5:30 p.m. 2024. The Finance Chair will be here momentarily. I will just temporarily start the meeting for her. Agenda review, community comments is first. We'll talk about the proposed changes to Act 127 and consider revising the budget for fiscal year 24-25. If we choose to do that, we could send a seconded motion to the board for the meeting later today. Then we have a warrant report to approve, previous minutes to approve, and then we can adjourn. Any modifications or changes to the agenda? Okay. Any community comments, or are you here for community comments?
I have something to say, but I think I'll wait until the full school board meeting.
Okay, great. Then we can move right to the proposed changes to Act 127. Whenever you are ready, the meeting is yours. You just give me a nod. Yeah, we ran up the stairs, so.
Okay, I'll read a lot more interesting.
So, in the House, right now, the Ways and Means Committee has passed a proposal on how to change Act 127. I believe Appropriations approved it today, and it is expected to be on the floor in all stages of approval of the House tomorrow. So this bill is very likely to sail through both the House and the Senate, and the governor has indicated that he would like a quick resolution to this. So there's likely chance that this will pass through quickly. And what this is, do you want to talk about it or do you want me to talk about it?
Totally up to you. We're gonna have Nicole and I put a memo together that sort of outlines some of the changes. We're gonna walk through that, but either way is good.
Why don't you take it then?
Yeah.
And Lisa, it's yours now, so I'm just sitting quietly unless people have questions.
You go ahead.
I was gonna just start with the memo that was attached to the agenda. I won't read through it, but I'll kind of go through and summarize the high points. So the memo, the point of the memo was really just to provide the changes between the previously warned budget, which was on January 15th, and the revisions to this version 2 that we're presenting tonight. Also to go over the changes.
Before we do that, I just want to talk about the law that's proposed change before. Is that what you?
That's my next section.
Okay,
yes.
Let's talk about the law before we talk about
The proposed changes and what's happening in the legislature right now. So on February 6th, Ways and Means presented a change to Section 6 of Act 127 as it's currently proposed, which is the section that focuses on the calculation of the tax rate and the tax rate review committee that we've been discussing. The crux of the change is to remove the 5% tax rate cap and the 10% ed spending review committee and institute a 5-year tapered targeted tax rate discount, which goes into effect in fiscal year 25. So the calculation compares state districts to the statewide total pupil change. So what they're doing is effectively calculating what pupils would be pre-Act 127. So in an equalized pupil world, so what MMUUSD's pupil count would be pre-Act 127 compared to the state. And then with the new weighting, the Act 127 weighting compared to the state. And if our respective ratio has decreased from pre-127 to post-127, we are then considered a disadvantaged district. And the negative percent, the percent that we have lost in that ratio, converts to the cent discount that we will receive. So there's a chart in the memo that might help illustrate this a little bit more, but our district's pre-Act 127 share of pupils was 2.95. Our post 127 share of the pupils is 2.57. So that's a 12.75% decrease, which is rounded to 13. So we will receive a 13-cent decrease on our preliminary homestead tax rate. So this new proposal, if we apply it to the currently warned budget, would result in a year-over-year increase of 20 cents in our CLA homestead tax rate. So I don't know if you want me to get into the budget piece or if you feel like that's.
Yeah, go.
Okay. So based on what we're seeing, how that translates, we recommend the following revision to the 25 budget proposal. We are recommending that the 5.5 million in additional one-time facilities money be removed. This will result in a discounted, so that's net of the 13-cent discount, homestead tax rate of 1.257, which is a decrease of 1 cent from the currently warned budget, and an increase of 5 cents from our current FY24 pre-CLA homestead tax rate. The changes are highlighted in the summary in detail. It's really just one highlight on that capital line. So as Edie has already mentioned, Ways and Means drafted the new language. It on what date? Sorry, as she mentioned, it's already passed the committee and was going to appropriations, which happened today and passed.
Today.
Just one important point from this paragraph here is that it includes $500,000 appropriated from the general fund to offset election costs incurred by school, for rewarning, reissuing ballots, etc.
Do we think that would be enough to cover everybody's?
I don't feel like I have the perspective to answer that.
I really don't either. I mean, I think, I'm not sure where that number came up with. There's costs associated with, ballots and, the special vote in general. So it probably is pretty close, depending on how many people take it, want to do this. But it does give districts the opportunity, to rewarn and revote, their budget, past the March 5th date.
And then the last part of the memo just mentions that we recommend postponing the vote to a date before April 15th, which is when districts are allowed to postpone their votes until. And that covers the memo. I'm happy to pull up the summary. Again, though, it's just the one highlighted change.
Why don't we go ahead and pull up a summary and then we can start discussion or take any.
Are you able to?
Summary on there.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Start with you, Ken.
Okay. Do we know, so the tapered, soft landing approach that now has been, presented, have we thought about the unintended consequences of that? Has anyone, I mean, do we see any challenges of that? And, to answer my own question, it seems very, familiar to the merger, incentive, right? The merger incentive was you get 6 cents or whatever it was in the first year, and then 5 cents and then 4 cents. And it was, the unintended, I guess, consequences of that was that every year we had a guaranteed tax increase for 5 years. And we had to do things to offset that or suffer the consequence, or realize that our tax rate would be going up because the tax discount be reducing. As part of the merger, we had opportunities to offset, but with this activity, there is nothing. There's nothing that unless we plan to reduce staffing, there's nothing that, would come about as part of this. So we're basically, now foreseeing a 5-year hill that we have to climb. And so does the money that we set aside 2 years ago, can that be used to pay down this, how much of that would help us offset it? Have we looked at those numbers?
I just worry about, the facility stuff that we put in, this stuff is going to have to be done probably within the next 4 to 5 years. So
Yeah,
we're
well,
gonna.
hold on that one, but just as far as the, eventually it has to all go away, but how much of, every year, like next year, how much would our tax rate go up, all things being the same, except for this 20%?
But also, wouldn't we have to take into account inflationary costs of everything
Yeah,
else?
everything else,
Yeah.
but just same for same, are we talking about a 2-cent increase to the tax rate next year?
What is it, 10%?
It's 20%,
Right.
of 13 cents.
2013,
So 20 over.
Yeah.
20, so it's a 20%.
2.6 cents or something like that increase.
I'm doing
What would that be? 20%.
It's 10 cents. So it would go from 13 to 10.
Right, so we've got a 3-cent
Yeah.
increase
Yeah.
every year.
Mhm.
Well, at least it does a gradual thing. I think in principle, it's a better approach than what was there before, but now we have the challenge of finding an alternative way to fund our projects that we said we need to get done with this additional money. So have we considered, do we need to consider, bonding at this point as a, means to do this, or is that a next year consideration?
We couldn't do it this year.
Mhm.
I think it would be hard to put together a bond right now, but it certainly is something that we should be considering, in the future.
I feel like, that is almost inevitable at this point, given the 2 to 3 cents for 5 years that we're going to be challenged to manage. Plus, as you say, the cost of everything else going
Yeah,
up.
like the budget's gonna go up regardless.
Regardless,
Yeah.
right now, you get an additional
Yeah.
penalty or an additional increase because of the 5 years. And we have to come up with some kind of quote unquote way of absorbing it, which most likely is going to be through a long-term bond.
I have parallel concerns with you, because all I keep thinking about is like, I've watched a lot of Senate hearings the past couple weeks, and it sounds like when they talk about it, it's like, well, give time for these districts to tighten their belts, but like our belt's as tight as it can go without drastic changes. That I feel like we need to start talking about down, like, because in 5 years, when we aren't getting this discount anymore, plus however what budget increases are going to happen that are out of our control, like we can't keep raising raising the taxes. Like we need something drastic has to change, and I don't know what it is, but I feel like we need to start talking about it. And like, it makes me really worried.
Yeah, I did. So I just want to say that yes, we have to be thinking about this, and probably not tonight,
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
right? Like of course,
Let's
right?
get the
Like,
budget passed, but
So I just want to, one of the things that is also happening in the legislature right now is funding for school construction, right? So maybe, and there actually is some good progress on that. And there are some people who are, we already have the survey, they know that gobs of money, that's the technical term, statewide, that needs to happen, or that schools, districts need, there is a thought about how to make sure that schools are being repaired and replaced in the right numbers, right, at the right places statewide. Like there's a lot of thinking happening. There's not a lot of actual bill writing that's happening. So I don't want to get ahead of that tonight for sure. Tonight, I want us to be really focused on, are we ready to take a budget forward to our district at a regular meeting? So we don't have to have a special meeting, because I always want this to be as clear and transparent to folks. And I don't love special meetings that pop up when people aren't expecting them, and big decisions that get made at those times. So I don't want to rush anyone, but I do want to have that context as to why.
Okay, just respond to that, Sarah.
Okay, and then I want to respond to it as well. So go ahead.
The reason why I was looking further out is just to make sure that, you know, for the record and for all of that, that this isn't just a quick magic solution to the current problem. Like, it might solve today's issue with a huge amount of money, you know, that isn't available, but there's still that need, and we have to consider that. And also that this will create additional challenges for us with the tapered approach than any other method out there. So I think it's important to get it out there, but I agree. Our focus should be, and I think there's no debate about it. Like, I think what's been proposed is the only option we really have. And it's fortunate that it's a bit of a wash. It's almost like the numbers were based on what we put together, instead of 1 cent difference to the estimated tax rate if we remove the 5.5 million. So I skipped ahead because it's like, yeah, that's what we got to do. But yeah.
I think Tara has her hand raised.
Yeah, first we'll go to Tara.
Yeah.
Thanks. I have so many questions, and I'm just simply aggravated, but I don't think anybody's been able to communicate to me, or haven't been able to read anywhere, what is our incentive for removing that 5.5 million? Right? Like, what are we going to do when, if we're like, right, we need to focus on just our district. We can't worry about the entire state. That's not in our purview, even though we're aware of what's going on. Right? Like, how many school boards are actually going to, you know, chop their budget over the next couple of days, just because the legislature is fast tracking, you know, the change to the section?
Who wants to answer that? I can answer.
You have the best.
So our incentive is that we no longer have the benefit of the 5% cap. So our taxpayers pay every penny of our entire budget. Like, our tax rate is based on all of that. So as small as we can make this budget, the smaller the tax rate will be for our taxpayers in this town. And so we had the money there because it didn't cost us extra, but now it's going to cost us lots extra. You probably have the number of how much extra.
20 cents.
20 cents.
20 cents extra, which normally our budgets go up how many cents?
Yeah, we've been
A handful of
really,
cents. Yeah,
we've been flat or, deploying up and down a little bit for several years.
Usually we're at like 2 cents,
Yeah.
1 cent. We try to keep the tax rate as close to the previous year as we possibly can. So to do a 20-cent increase in 1 year is a disincentive for us, and our taxpayers, I would imagine, don't want to pay that much right now.
So then, right, I know that there's only a small group of districts that become disadvantaged.
It's actually about, I ran all the spreadsheet geeked out last week with all of this. There are about 9 districts that are flat, and all of the other districts are either up or down, and it's about the same number. A few more are disadvantaged than advantaged, but it's roughly the same. numbers. So, it's like a tiny percentage that doesn't have any change at all, and everyone else is either, it's like 40% are up and 35% are down or something like that.
But there's only a few that are like multiples that like in the 10 to 12 cent, 13, 14 cent, like the drastic.
Right.
Sure, what I could say, yeah.
I think it's 47 districts or so altogether that are disadvantaged, and then I would say it's probably like more like a quarter or a third that are 10 cents or higher.
I guess where I'm going with this is, right, if the bill passes, if the language is changed, I guess like statewide thinking, if people don't change their budgets and keep them the way they are, how is that going to impact the overall like tax rate, right? Across the state, right? Because my understanding is every district in the state submitted their budget with that additional 5% in there. So, right, like is the expectation now everybody just removes it and, the ed fund's cool?
That's what they're estimating, that the ed spending will go down, quite a bit. And what they did was they modeled it and they raised the base yield amount. And that is what helped us, bring down the our tax rate with the discount. I know, Nicole, you were at Basel and you said like about half the people were at least considering it.
Yeah, that was kind of the read of the room.
But we are one of the most disadvantaged. I mean, I just want to we're in the top shelf of the disadvantaged.
Okay.
Diane?
Yeah,
Are you done?
sorry, Kara, are you done?
I could go on, but I'm gonna let somebody else jump in.
It's very challenging.
What would really help me is a lot of the numbers that we're talking about aren't anchored to things that I can see. I would really like to be able to see that tally, the total of the budget that we proposed before, the budget we're proposing now, how the pennies impact the tax rate, and how the pennies impact just the overall total numbers. I think I had asked those questions earlier to you, John, because I can't take from this what we're looking at and put that piece into my head and say, here's what we were going to do, here's what we're now going to do based on what they're telling us is going to happen with the law. I feel like I need to see that impact so that I can explain that impact, and then I can more easily vote on the question that we have in front of us. The only other thing I was going to say is I do hear that Essex Westford is not changing their budget, but they did not have a facilities piece in there. Just saying that.
So we have a slide, I think, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I think it pretty much outlines what you're asking for. Well, we can pop that up, when we get through this part, if you would like.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get to that, Ethan, do you have a question?
It's not really a question, it's more of a comment, and just maybe it's a philosophical issue that I have. I'm not loving the phrasing advantaged and disadvantaged. And I'm wondering if there is a different way that we can express the impact, because it doesn't necessarily come across great when we talk about us being disadvantaged, and I believe we are, but I just think that in terms of messaging it would help. And I think people would be maybe could hear it differently if we use some different terminology. And I don't really have any suggestion for that at this point. I'm going to think about it, but I just throw that out there for consideration.
I'm going to just point of order. Sorry, I don't know the whole thing here, but I think, have 7 school board members here at this meeting. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is a quorum of the board. So who on this group is not on the finance committee?
I'm not, should we like leave?
No, you don't have to leave, but could you just sit back and Ethan, you're a finance alternate or
No.
member? Okay, so I'm just gonna let Lisa make sure we're managing this part as a finance committee meeting so that we're not
Yeah.
making board decisions and, checking on who's doing what and where.
This is just a business question. Is there gonna be a tour at 6?
Yeah.
I'm ready, whenever you are.
I can help rally other people and do that too.
Thank you.
Cause you'll talk about this at the.
Oh, yeah.
Then I'll have something to say.
And Ethan, we'll just take your comment as a community comment for this.
Perfect. That'd be great. Thanks. And I'm happy. Would it be helpful if I jumped off? I was just,
You can stay and listen, or you can be prepared and be more prepared, or whatever you prefer.
all right, I'll just
We'll just go there.
not talking.
Just on the note, who is serving as the alternate, Diane or Edie?
Diane's raising.
And Tara.
I was gonna say, am I,
So we have Lisa, Heather, Kevin, and Eric as published members of the committee.
okay,
3 of us are here.
okay,
So we have one alternate that needs to be.
that can vote,
that
so
can-
the others can
They
participate in
can
the meeting.
participate, but voting wise.
Yep.
We've
I
never
think it's-
had this.
We've never had this. I think it's,
Somebody
How many
just
people
needs
at a
to-
meeting? Wow. Warrants like this.
I think it's Diane,
Diane's the first alternate
Yep.
in the list.
okay?
So
Yeah, I don't care either way, but you know, it'll be
I
fine.
don't think, yeah, okay, so there we
Alright.
go. Okay.
So therefore, then to be able to maybe get to the point of this section of the meeting, should we bring up the slide that compares the things? Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Rick, could you do that? It's right in there, it's the slides. If you go
I
to,
didn't know.
Should we just jump right to slide 3?
sure. Yeah,
And while I agree, we need to think about the future and potential bond issues, I also got the overwhelming sense from the committee that they were avoiding, the House and Ways Committee, avoiding talking about the future as much as possible. So it seems like there are a lot of balls in the air for anything beyond this year.
Yeah, for me,
There-
it just
you
comes
are
down
absolutely
to
right.
how
We have
much
to
of the
think about it.
5.5 do we remove?
They're trying to make sure the education committee is the one leading changes for
Okay.
down the road, so that was the.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's all valid.
Oh yeah, 'cause I'm not, like, I mean, I just go facilities aside, like, just funding, like, school, like just our budget and just running the schools. Like,
Right.
I don't know where else.
Oh, yeah.
You like, it just,
Which slide are you?
like, I don't know where it's gonna, how we're gonna make that work.
No, I mean, I think this is where we started the budget
Yeah.
process this year, was
Okay,
exactly at this
present.
point, before we even had.
So you want to jump to
facilities.
another slide? too?
Slide
Yeah,
3, the
slide
next
3.
one down. Thank you.
Can't cut the size of the charts anymore.
No, I don't want, I can't even read it from here.
Okay. So,
God's part.
this is a slide, kind of that Diane was talking about, of the information she was hoping to see. So this is really summative of the budget as it was previously or currently warned and what our newly proposed budget is. So the top line, the top 2 lines really are total FY25 budgeted expenditures and total FY25 ed spending. Both are decreasing by the 5.5, so that's just the facilities money. And then if we go down a line, so our preliminary homestead tax rate prior to any discount, in the previously warned budget was 1.5934. It's going to the 1.38 rounded. So, a decrease of 21 cents or 13%. So then the next line is the discount mechanism. So in the currently warned budget, we have the 5% cap, as you know. The current mechanism as proposed is the 13-cent discount. So then we get down to the discounted homestead tax rate. So from our currently warned budget, it's a decrease of 1 cent. And then I added a line below that just to show what the change is from our current FY24 homestead tax rate. In the currently warned budget, it was a 5% increase, and now we are a 5 cent increase, or 4.49% increase year over year pre-CLA.
Diane?
So what will we be telling voters that their percent increase will be?
In the pre-CLA homestead tax rate, is that the question?
Yeah,
4.49%.
okay. So it's not the 8 point whatever we were looking at before from the increase in the tax rate. From the original time when we were talking about what all of the changes from Act 127 meant, we were going to be hitting close to 9 and then using the 5%. So now the rate increase is now below 5%.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because of that 13 cent
Because of the
discount.
discount, yeah.
And the base yield went up.
I guess I'm getting us to try to focus on the good news, because that will be part of the communication and spin. So, you know, that's the part we have to also look at.
Correct.
Yep.
From what they've been previously seeing,
This is
4.4.
a small reduction. But a reduction.
Right.
Still the highest tax rate increase that we've shared in several years.
Do you want to jump down to that slide 6?
Yeah.
Just, you mind jumping down 3? Here we go. And this is just a 4-year comparison of our education tax rate. So there was some talk before about, you know, what our quote unquote normal tax rate changes in any given year. In this slide, it's important to note too that 23 and 24 decreased in part to there being some surplus money in the ed fund. So even our proposed tax rate now in 25 is lower than it was in 23 with that additional surplus that drove up the yield in that year.
And it's not there, but in 21, it was 1.47. So we were at 47, 48, 30, 21. And now we're estimating 26.
I mean, this is a really important slide, because what it shows is that our tax rate next year is actually less than it was. You know, it goes more than 4 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, so that's something we definitely want to be communicating. But it is, I mean, it's still, you know, you got, and it is a bigger increase than we have seen for sure. And, you know, it is a good chunk of it is a product of 127, or most of it. And the CLA too, I think we really want to think about that, because that is really, you know, there's been some big changes in that, and that will shock people.
Take a look at a second, Diane. Sorry.
So just before we move on from this, I just want to make sure, John, that there isn't anything from the whole facilities sort of bundle that we had been looking at that is urgent and that will require us to face something that our capital fund can't handle in the next year. Because I'm thinking that if there was something, then this would be the time to be able to add that in. If it worked for that situation. I don't want us to be caught not being able to pay for an urgent need out of our capital fund reserve.
Yeah, these are we do have about $175,000 more than we did last year in capital. That was in draft 1 and 2. So this actually is an increase compared to what we have had the last 5 years. So, you know, these are the big high cost pieces that we had identified early on in the budget. And so-
stay in the budget going forward.
yes, you know, this is something we want to keep or add to as we incrementally in subsequent budget years. I mean, it's
There's,
a hard
are any of
question
the
to
projects that we're cutting that you're like, "I really wish we had done that"?
I mean, I know it's hard for me to answer that. Is there anything like, we didn't talk about anything with Phil that was like a safety issue. You know, those are the things that we would, you know, we've got to fix. And we do have money in our buildings budget to be able to do some of those regular maintenance things that, so, you know, it'd be great to have more facility money, but we actually are increasing it by, you know, actually quite a bit percentage wise. And we do have, not to belabor this, but we do, going back to what Kevin said, we have, I don't know, $875,000 that we set aside to help in future years to help mitigate any impact on the tax rate. That was what the article said. That's what you know, the purpose was. So that's in a fund, and we have about 1.5 million in our right, 1.6 in our capital reserve fund. So I think I would say that any safety issues we could cover in that fund if there was something that popped up. But you know, saying that too, our buildings are, you know, 50 years old and too many of them. So it's, you know, we've done a very good job of maintaining what we have. But you know, at some point we're going to need to upgrade. And I think that's what the, you know, bond would help us with. And hopefully, you know, they've said in the biennium, there's going to be something around school construction aid. It's really important to remember that in 2007, they stopped construction aid. Bonds started failing and people stopped doing them because it just is so expensive and it really puts so much pressure on the tax rate. And prior to 2007, for ever, like 30 to 40 years, there was construction aid.
Should we look at the CLA and then, sure, see if we can close this discussion?
It's 2 slides down.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments before we move on to
I
that?
have a question that I'm not sure if it's pertinent for this or if I should hold off and do it on the entire school board meeting, but what does it look like if our budget doesn't pass? And I feel like, I know we don't want to talk about that, but like, you know, I feel like something that we need to talk about. And then like, I think that we also, something we should let public know what it looks like in actuality, if it doesn't pass, so that people know, like, I feel like some people are like, I'm stuck, I'll vote no on the budget, but they don't think about what that actually means. So I feel like we need to put that out there too.
It's a very good question. I mean, we don't have a budget by June 30th. Then we have to borrow money, 80% of this budget. We have to keep going back out until we pass the budget. There isn't so we would need to go back and reduce the budget, where I've shared this before that, you know, we're not spending money where we don't need to. And we really need every person right now that we have in the buildings.
I think that we all know this, but like, I don't think that like the people that vote know that.
Yep.
Necessarily, where it's like, I think that's worth talking about.
I agree.
Well, that was my hope by trying to get a second emotion and have a direction, and that way we can start focusing on
Okay.
getting it passed. Okay. If we did.
Okay.
Tara?
Similarly, if we pause our budget vote and wait, whatever, a month, 2 months, whatever it ends up being, what's the likelihood we're going to lose people, like the voting population, right? Like if right now we'd have, I don't know if we'd have 1,500 people in Richmond vote. I guess I'm just worried about like losing people in voting. Like, how does that, my God, how does that happen? Right? Like, do we mail the ballots to everybody and say, hey, you didn't vote on this back in March. Now's the time to vote. Fill it out. Come.
Can we have this conversation with the full board? I think the finance discussion should be with the finance
Yeah.
committee, and this is more of a full board discussion.
Sure.
Okay.
I agree. But I understand you.
It's all valid and.
Okay, Kevin.
Don't sign so loud.
Perhaps relevant to the finance committee. I'm trying to rationalize when we would use that $875,000 to help buy down an increase. If not now, what would need to happen for us to use that?
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for an answer. I'm just trying to, like, why wouldn't we take a third of it or a fifth of it and apply it?
So do you mean keep the 5.5 million in and then use the 875 to buy down?
No, just in addition to,
Because I think it then sets us up.
because a 5% tax rate increase is a 5% tax rate. We've
Right.
had 0.48 minus 11 minus 3.
But
But
then
it's going to go up next year,
But then
and
wouldn't
the
it
year
go up?
after, and
Yeah.
the year after. I feel like we should wait until. I think there should be a better reason than we can just do it, personally. It needs to be, we have this one-time thing coming up, or we want the bond to pass, or something else that we can use as a trade-off.
So
But right now, it's
money's
not
not
really.
growing, right?
Right.
It's getting lesser and lesser value every year. Yeah, and I feel like that should be maintained.
what would that look like? How would that affect this year if we decide to apply?
Well, I think that's a fair question, and while you're moving numbers on, for me, this budget, right, this presentation as a package, right, so the budget without the extra money that we still have to spend at some point because we know we have needs, right? We know that our student need isn't declining. We know that our student population is relatively flat. We know that we will have less money. We will have higher taxes next year if nothing changes with the law, right? So this is the year that we have the biggest support from the state, getting on this off ramp of where we were funded from before to the way that the funding is changing for the future. It feels like if we do that now, then the change next year is going to be even bigger than it was this year, and next year will be even more difficult to pass the budget. So personally, if we think we can pass this budget, I would hold this lever for down the road when it's going to only be worse. Because when we get a 10 cents off as a discount, it will be harder. 13 cents is still hard, right? 10 cents is going to be harder, and then 8 cents is going to be harder, and then it's probably even less than that. It's probably like 7, and then 5, and then so it's just stepping down so much. I would personally like to have that for a future date when we know that, we have a roof, we have a PCB issue, we have some other issue. Gosh, now, but something. Who knows? Like what's unforeseen. It's for me. It's that like parachute, or that we really need. And this feels like we have a mat that we're landing on this year. It's not concrete.
Diane?
I agree with Edie. I think that the political environment right now has pretty much primed the public to know that this is going to be a tough year. I think that when we do the subtraction of the 500,000, and we show that we're doing the best we can to care about keeping this budget reasonable in this political climate, that would be enough for right now. And that saving that lever for later, I think is a better strategy.
I sort of feel that it just encourages that where we had the decline in the tax rate because there was extra money in the budget. So it's like, oh, every year somehow there'll be some extra money that we can just throw at it and lower the tax rate instead of facing the hard reality that we've been lucky. Do you have how much it would lower the tax?
Yeah,
The whole thing, you applied the whole 850?
the 875. So instead of the 5 cent change year over year, it would be a 3 cent change. So the 4.49% would be 2.47.
And then we have nothing.
Or we could put the same number in the budget, just convert it into capital. So we would draw it down.
Then we'll be in the same boat right now. Then we'd have a higher budget.
Same, right? At 875,
As revenue, non-property tax revenue.
convert it, and then you can pull from it at any time. You don't need a vote. I guess we wait a year. I mean, I'm okay with that. It's just, since it occurred to me, since it's not accruing any interest and our salaries are going up 5-6%, the value of that money, it significantly reduces over the last 3 years. Would have brought the tax rate down a lot better when we first got there. So eventually it'll be worthless.
I'm happy to do some like we did in the beginning of this budget season, some like 5-year forecast. Now, since we know what that cent discount will be for the next 4 years after this, just to take
Pretty
some
good idea.
assumptions and we can look at that next time.
But the positive news, it's less than it was, the tax rate.
And I mean, to be fair, like that's another unintended consequence of this late changes to the law, right? It means school districts can't plan and use their resources as well as they otherwise could have. So I think that's
Does people feel okay about maybe having a motion to approve?
yes, we're finishing the finance committee meeting.
Are we just doing the budget change or the date as well?
We don't.
We don't have the warning. We would have to have a meeting to do that, to approve the warning. And I need some guidance from,
Came out just a little bit ago.
okay.
Came out 10 minutes before we
So
started.
we would be making a recommendation to the board to reduce the proposed budget. That's it.
Yeah. And or we could also, we would reschedule the meeting before, the vote before. April
That's up to the
15th.
board to figure.
Right.
Yeah, yes, that's the board.
Yeah, we polled the town clerks to say in April, the Tuesday, I think it's 2 and 9, what would be the best one? And we got some feedback on that. And then it's just using what the statutory language is and really trying to show it to the Secretary of State and say, okay, is this a legal document? Because this is pretty new territory. But we have let the town clerks know that this is a pretty strong possibility, so that they're aware.
So we'll get, okay, when we get to the board, we're just deciding if we want to propose a new budget to the board. That's all this committee is doing.
And is it an if the law changes, we recommend?
No, we are proposing a new budget. The law is changing. I wouldn't waste my vote on that. I wouldn't, I mean, it's not really worth the waste of our time. There's zero chance that the Act 127 will stay the way it is today in law. Well, there will be some change. There's zero chance.
This rule went to overtime. There was certificates of that. Okay, yeah, it just seems strange, like we're forecasting a change in the law and we're saying, let's reduce our budget in anticipation that the law is going to change. So.
And the only
Seems a
reason,
little
we can do it is because we're in COVID era rules until the end of this year. So that allows us to actually make a change like this. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So yes, yep.
And it would, it would be contingent, right? I mean, if something changed, we'd have to get a special meeting or emergency meeting, but because the timeline is still pretty tight, doing it now gives us a lot of time to plan more effectively.
And engage with the public. Like at our finance presentation on Thursday.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the change in the budget?
Tara and I can't, so.
Okay. So moved. So, okay, give me a second. Diane, Kevin.
Sure, I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Okay, with 1 nay, everybody else approves, motion passes. Okay. And to wrap up, can I get a motion to approve the January warrants?
So moved.
Second? Okay, all those in favor?
Discussion.
No discussion, yes.
They didn't have any of that categorization yet. Was that something we talked about doing, or did I dream that up?
We had summarized all of the payroll information into one line. There's not that it's impossible, but there's no easy way based on the field that the e-finance report exports of the Cognos report to easily do like a VLOOKUP or a pivot table to summarize that. It would just be very manual. So you can do it at the discretion. It will be time consuming.
No, I don't think it should be time consuming. Big long list of a lot of random expenses. So we trust the
Yeah,
process.
I understand.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Pass unanimously. Approve the previous meeting minutes of, seems like ages ago, January 11th. They get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
She's voted yes.
Okay. Just unanimous. And can I get a motion to adjourn so we can go to our next meeting?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you.